Hello everyone, this is Randy from Aquarium Co-op, and today I'm going to make a custom polycarbonate lid for the 40 breeder in my, what do I call this? The prototype and former fish room here in the warehouse. And the tank, again, that it's going to go on is this 40 breeder right here. Inside this tank, got some cool looking fish. Let me see if I can't get them on camera. Rosy barbs right there that were sent by an awesome forum member to me for breeding. And to prove that I actually bred them, look at that guy. That is a juvenile. So he was bred, or she was bred rather, in the 10 gallon in my office. And then I moved him here to grow out, and then I just left this smaller group of adults in this tank to help keep the algae, help control algae. And if you know from my channel that I've featured this tank before, when it was loaded with crypts, and unfortunately, the crypts were doing really well for weeks and weeks, and then one day they decided to nuke themselves. So that was a bit of a bummer. I let a couple weeks go by, and then I switched over to Anubias. So I've got a couple different generations of Anubias in here. The ones in the back are older, and I believe that's some Nanji mixed in with some Hostifolia, some Barterii. Let's see, what else do I have? I have some Nana Petite in the front. Oh, there we go. And then I just recently added some more Nana and a little bit more Barterii. Put the Nana kind of in the foreground, mid-ground. And then we had some trial plants actually. I can't remember what it was. It was something species Vietnam. It's supposed to be kind of like a grass type plant. And it didn't do the best. So maybe something that needs higher light or some CO2. But this is kind of like the last little remnant. There are some stubbies in here. So that was one pot right there. That was another pot right there. But that one over there in the right corner seems to still be doing the best. Well, and by best, I mean compared to the other stumps of plants. Let's see, what else is in here? We also have some white clouds. Those are white cloud fry that I also bred here in the warehouse. And then the platinum marriage kissing Medaka rice fish, Mayuki rice fish. These ones are from Dan's Fish. It's quite a mouthful. Let's see if I can pull the light forward. There we go. I probably should have done that from the beginning. But these are a beautiful blue shimmery fish. Of course, rice fish love to hang out at the top where the frame is, so it makes it a little hard to shoot them. All right, enough of the tank inhabitants. So what are we gonna do today? Currently, I have a glass top fin lid on this Aquarium tank, and it works, it fits, it's fine. There's nothing overly wrong with it, but it has some quirks that I'm not a big fan of, and that being how the second piece here in the back requires a plastic extender, if you will, and these are kind of a pain in the butt to get on and then also kind of precisely fit. And then you've got these other channels here, which are intended to give you the flexibility of, if you're gonna run a hang-on back, if you're gonna run cords for heaters or an internal filter, whatever it is, so you don't have to have it fully covered. I'm just not the biggest fan of them, and I think that the overall fit is not the best. And I feel like I've adjusted these many times, and if I pull this too far forward, this becomes in danger of kind of falling off back here. So I'm not a huge fan of that. So what I wanna do is create my own custom lid, the dimensions that I want for this tank, but also fitting the new Aquarium Co-op Easy Feeding Port. And so what I want to do as well is have a polycarbonate lid so I can install one of the new Aquarium Co-op Easy Feeding Ports. Let me see if I can one-handed get out of this bag for us. But this feeding port allows you, when you have your own DIY polycarbonate lid, that you can have this awesome feeding port that you can cut and put on your lid to give you real clean and simple access to your aquarium without having to move, let's say, your light, because sometimes if you like to have your light more towards the front, you'll have to move your light or an air pump. I have an air pump up here so I don't have to run a check valve, which this is a battery backup air pump, so that shouldn't really even need to be something that I'm concerned about as far as it losing air pressure and back siphoning out of the airline out of the aquarium. But I like to keep my air pump up here for this tank anyway. So yeah, when you have a glass lid, you can't do that. You can't install, I mean, you could try to cut the glass if it's not tempered, but I'm not very experienced with cutting glass. I really don't want to, and I do want to switch over to a polycarbonate lid. So again, I can have more custom dimensions as well. And what's really neat is we actually include a cutout template, which I'll show later as well, of making it easier to install the lid. So you just trace around the cutout, and that will give you a nice template for the frame of this. And it's even got a little bit of wiggle room on the side, so if you don't cut it perfectly, or if you cut it just a touch too big from the actual opening itself, you still have some space where it'll cover it up and make it look nice. So next up, I'm gonna take some dimensions off camera. I'll go ahead and do my cuts off camera and come back and show you the kind of semi-finished product. But before I do that, one of the questions will be, what kind of blade do you use? So I'm gonna use a table saw to do my cutting. And the blade I'm gonna use is this guy right here. It is an aluminum and plastics blade, and I believe the biggest difference is gonna be the size and the number of teeth. So you're gonna get a lot more teeth, smaller than, let's say, a blade for cutting wood, like framing wood or something like that. These are also called non-ferrous metal blades as well. I've heard that you can still have success cutting a polycarbonate lid with a normal wood blade, but my preference is I'd rather, I don't want to start kind of on the back foot. I'd rather have the proper equipment to make sure that I do it correctly, or to help me do it as correctly as I possibly can. And then one last thing, I'll show you the full sheet. I remember these guys used to be a lot cheaper. I think this sheet was about $64 at Home Depot. Or was it Lowe's that I got this guy at? Either way, it was 64 bucks. I feel like they used to be 30 or 40, kind of pre-COVID times. But this is what I'm gonna be cutting. Tough Tex multi-wall polycarbonate panel. And then I'll swing you around. And let's see if we can see how it's a double wall panel here. So you've got a wall to the left and right, and then you have these like little ribby channels, and these are actually hollow. And I'm gonna cut this so that, let's see, let me swing you around. So that these ribs run parallel to the front and back of the aquarium as opposed to perpendicular. And that'll be more clear as I show you the next step. Okay, so the hard part is done. We now have the lid cut to shape, and it is a very, very nice fit. Now, a couple things. Next steps, I'm gonna take off this protective plastic sticker that they have on here. I'm actually gonna notch out a little spot here in the back for my airline tubing. That's really the only thing that I have going on in here. I don't run a hang-on back filter. I don't have any heaters in this. This is a just ambient room temperature tank, which is very convenient. I just have this one little airline guy, and I probably could leave it like this, but I have the tools for it, so I'm just gonna notch out just a little hole right here for this airline tubing. And one thing too, like if you've got killifish in your fish room, which you already know this, or if you're interested in keeping killifish, you want a lid that's gonna fit as tightly as possible, because those little stinkers, and ask me how I know, along with other people, they will jump, they will find the holes. And if I was actually gonna do this for a killifish tank, I would get a drill bit that's basically the exact same size as this airline tubing, maybe even a little bit smaller, drill one hole, and then force this airline tubing through. We're basically like a friction fit, so there's next to no way that a killifish is gonna get out, because even with what I'm gonna notch out, a killifish, very well may try to jump out of that. Will they? I don't know, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Again, I'm not running killifish. I don't have killifish in this tank, so I don't necessarily need to do that. And I'm also going to install one of our lid handles. And what else is different about this is that I'm gonna leave it as one piece. In my fish room before, I've actually cut these down the middle, just right down here. So we've got two different sides. And the reason you would do that is for catching out fish, or primarily to feed them, your daily or twice daily feeding, whatever your schedule is. But using the feeding port, this is really all I need to access the tank. So I'm gonna try it out. I may decide that, I actually do wanna come back and cut this in half. I can do that at a later point in time, that's no worries. But I will preemptively install the lid handle on here, as well as having the feeding port on here. And you might have noticed too, so I'll go back over to this guy. This was the glass lid. this is some product testing that we were doing. So this is the original handle that would have come with this top fin lid, and it is a lot lower profile. And from the top down, you can see that it's just not nearly as thick. So I really love our handles. It's got a nice grip to it, especially if you've got slippery hands. The 3D print texture is actually really nice. It gives you something else to grip on, where this guy right here is just, it's so thin. They really need to include something better in these aquarium lids. And then the reason why there's 2 of them on here is just testing out 2 different adhesives. They both work awesome. They're both still stuck on there, and they're not going anywhere unless you just absolutely abuse it beyond what it was meant for. So yeah, I just wanted to show that, because somebody might have wondered, why does Randy have 3 lid handles on that old glass tank? All right, well, I told you what I'm gonna do next, so I'm gonna go do it. So I just finished cutting out the little notch. I decided to do the whole the back corner, so a small notch in the back corner here. The airline tubing fits perfectly through this hole up against the frame without any pinching, and it just goes in and out, with a little bit of friction, but it's not being pinched. So I like that a lot. I've gone ahead and installed the lid handle. Prep the surface with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to clean it off, make sure there's no oils or debris or anything, and affix the lid handle to it so that's on there nice and secure. And then as far as placement for the easy feeding port, I think this kind of front and center left corner spot right here is going to work out really well. I like that a lot. Another cool thing about these lids is having these channels in here. It acts as a guide for you. So as far as making sure things are parallel. So when I place, I've gone ahead and cut out my template. So when I place this here, I think I'm going to go somewhere like that. So when I place that here, I'm going to line up the bottom edge of this. Ooh, let's get in focus now. There we go. I'm going to line up the bottom edge of this with those internal channel supports. And that's going to give me a nice parallel look to it. It's going to look nice and symmetrical, how it's supposed to. So next step, I'm going to trace that template, and then I'm going to use my, what do they call those? Multi-tool oscillating tools. I'm going to use my multi-tool to just easily do kind of like little plunge cuts to cut this rectangle out. Come back in and super glue the frame, but I'll show you the cut before I super glue the frame onto it. And the cut is done. I'll zoom in here. I got a little squirrely in the corners, but the beauty is that you take this frame right here, put the frame over it, and voila, cleans it up, looking real nice. Try it out, drop the door on there. Oh yeah, that's cool. Now, if I ever want to catch any fish out or do any serious maintenance, I can easily remove the entire lid. That's no problem. But for everyday feeding, which is what you're going to do 90% of the time, probably like 95% of the time actually, there you go, easy feeding port. So let's finish this up. I'm going to use some Aquarium Co-op super glue gel. I'm going to dab here. How's that coming on camera? I'm trying this one-handed. There. And we know this stuff is aquarium safe because you can use it on your plants, like your Java ferns and your Nubius. So of course it'll be safe for this. A little bit there. Spin her around. I have no idea how well that's showing up. Okay. Nice globs of super glue. I'm gonna try to hold this steady, folks. All right. The easy feeding port is in place. Let's go and put the lid on it. And that project, folks, is done. If you're running a fish room, if you've got a lot of tanks and you don't want to spend a lot of money on the glass tops that honestly aren't the best in terms of their fit and their functionality, do your own polycarbonate lids. I think out of that 64 bucks, I could probably make, I don't know, 4 or 5 lids for 40 breeders out of that material. It was very, very large. There's still excess, a lot of excess from this project of this material. Aquarium lid handle, easy feeding port, super awesome. And I think even the fish are happier, although they're probably just at the surface. They want me to feed them. All right, thanks everybody.